Give a bit of... Got it. Okay, now you can hear us. I'm Kate. This is Julie. We're both with Build Up. We're speaking about the Commons project today. And this really started with a conversation back in 2016 when we all know that the US political situation was changing quite rapidly. And we felt that both in terms of how politics was changing, the actions that were happening, the messaging that was coming out, and the tenor that was happening, but also very personally what that meant for our individual relationships with families, friends, colleagues. And so we started asking this question: are your relationships changing in the current political context? And specifically, what is social media sort of doing for your relationships within this current context? And this was part of our design process where we were sort of looking at, are people feeling a shift at their relationship in their personal relationships as the political space is also changing? And so part of the design process, we were looking at what people's experiences are in this. And this kind of reflects a variety of different political identities, but you can sort of see that people started to respond and they said, on social media, I'm unable to have open and honest dialogue. If you're not signaling you're in the correct diagnostic tribe, it's impossible to converse with people on social media, and I get blocked. One person sort of talking about how they're no longer friends or sort of friends with their father because of the way in which their political identity has sort of separated the two of them. Social media liars and trolls have spew hate, and have no facts to support anything that they're saying. At the same time, people were talking about using social media as a way to understand people around them and their viewpoints and their beliefs and really start to dig into them in very different ways. Of the political shifts that we're seeing in the United States, like, these are clearly not the most egregious. And at the same time, we know that what happens politically also affects us personally, and what happens personally affects what's happening politically. And so by changing, engaging at the personal level, we also sort of shape the political scale at the same time. And what we know really deeply is, beyond that being an important piece of it, is that fundamentally it's really difficult to shift actors in a community, and especially a community in the United States where we don't talk a lot about peace, to actively engage in their community and start to think about, how am I bridging connections in a space where it's much easier to sort of throw fire onto what currently exists in social media. And that was really the question that we had, is how can we build our own personal muscles and work with a group of people to also build their muscles in having constructive dialogues online as a vehicle to start to change the way in which, and sort of the atmosphere in the United States around what's happening politically.
Yes, so through these conversations and through our own experiences and intuition and sense as living as Americans in the US, we knew that we were a polarized society, and we knew that social media was either making it worse and or more rapid and or more visible. And here's what some of that online engagement looks like. There's clearly a vast difference of opinion in this example about Donald Trump, and in many of the examples and conversations we were having about him. But polarization is more than just a difference of opinion. It is the separation of opinions, yes, but of values and identities into increasingly isolated groups that are dependent on having an us and a them. Go to the next slide. Perfect. And in some cases that can be harmless, right? But when it becomes an issue is when the dialogue that are happening within these in-groups and out-groups become increasingly violent and concerning. And like when we see the term civil war start coming up in our political discourse and online, with this example of civil war sign-up trending for some time, we use these signals, and online this can be hashtags or groups that we're a part of, to say that I'm a part of this group and you're a part of another. We see hashtag MAGA, hashtag resistance, hashtag lock her up, hashtag lock him up. And we have these ways of identifying who we are and who we're not. So the question that we were asking of the Commons is, can we do more than just understand polarization? Because a lot of great work and research is being done about this. But how can we intervene in polarized conversations where we think they're happening the most on Twitter and Facebook, using peace-building principles and doing this at scale? And as a part of that, how can we reach the people that wouldn't otherwise be invited to these kinds of dialogue opportunities?
And just to frame a few of the hypotheses that grounded some of this work as we were going forward, this is sort of a famous meme that we thought was really perfect with engagement online. But I think one thing that's really clear is that polarization's happening to us. A lot of us are not really actively aware that that is happening at the same time. And so it's really easy to go with like the love or sort of the retweet without really realizing what information we're sending out into the world. At the same time, we know that social media can be an activator and sort of an amplifier for polarization and can be used to start to engage in a different dialogue when we think about it very clearly. And at the same time, we also know that like there's a lot of folks in the room that are already looking for peace-building strategies, but your average American is not fundamentally even going to put those terms together because most people are not actively thinking about that as a framework that's influencing the way in which they're experiencing their relationships and their society. And so we really asked this question of, how can we support people in building our social fabric online, especially when not everybody is a professional peace builder. So not everybody's sort of day job can be committed to this. And so we're sort of asking how can we engage everyday Americans in this process and sort of rebuilding it, especially when it's easy to add to the fire. It's very easy to sort of retweet, push out messaging that we don't sort of really intend. And while we also know that activism is extremely important, but activism is also not going to be pushed forward if we're not speaking to each other and if we have lost all connections and ability to work towards constructive conversation.
So our theory of change in asking that question is, if we could provide people with the training, support, resources, and opportunities to dialogue across the aisle, as it were, could we be a positive presence on social media for depolarizing action? And could we model the kind of constructive conversation that involves listening and respect and openness to others' ideas and humanity? And we did that through, sorry, if you can go back, Kate. We did that with some components to enact this theory of change. One is that we have a facilitator team who are the drivers of these conversations. We use data gathering and analysis to identify and select who we will be reaching out to. We have a custom-built platform that facilitators are using to identify and track the candidates that they are speaking with on social media. And at the crux of it, we have person-to-person conversations that are one-to-one online. And here's what some of those look like. We'll have more of these that you can see in our report of examples, but you'll see that our facilitators are modeling the kind of engagement that we hope to see at scale, which is curiosity and active listening and openness. And what they're not doing is being neutral or hiding their own opinions, but they're engaging as full humans with others in a way that's respectful and kind.
And so we kind of thought that people would sort of sit somewhere in between this. For some people, they're actively engaging, we're actively engaging them in conversation through Facebook ads or through Twitter conversations. Other people are sort of getting aware through exposure. There were a lot of conversations that sort of said, why are you having this particular conversation on Facebook? Why are you having this particular conversation on Twitter? And became sort of aware of both what a different dialogue on social media could look like, but also sort of a curiosity about a specific person can look like. For other people, it was a lot about actively engaging in conversation and being interested in sort of ongoing action. And so people could elect to continue in our Facebook group, continue hanging out with us on Twitter, continue with personal relationships with facilitators. And we think that some segment of these people will move into being connectors and starting to have the tools and really build up that muscle to start to think about being depolarizing or sort of connecting agents in their society.
I think maybe we should, skip ahead, to this part. To say really briefly, this is a initiative that's fraught with ethical conundrums. And Kate and I would both really love to talk to you about where the bridges are between activism and polarization and how we can use bots ethically on social media. And I think, yeah. And here's our facilitation team. The things that we have learned, we'll have a report out forthcoming, but the things that we've learned is that it really is that bad or worse online. We're living in these comment streams that they say to not go into, and we know that there's a huge need for this, for this kind of work, and we encourage all of you to be involved. But we also know that people want to be heard, and they want to have the opportunities to be heard, and people appreciate these kind of conversations online. And I think there's a place for all of us to be involved in that.
Okay, final remark. I think the final remark that we sort of had was really that, one, clearly like social media is evolving. The context's also evolving really quickly. We thought a lot about like what are the ethical pieces that are embedded into it that we can talk offline about. But I think one thing that was really important for all of us is that we were collectively building that muscle and learning it and sort of building a learning team around how we can actively engage as the tools and the context are changing at the same time. And that was probably the most meaningful piece, in addition to doing that with thousands of other people on the internet.
That's the comments. Talk to us after if you want to be involved.